Hello, Internet. My name is the Golden Stalfos, and today I want to talk about why I stopped watching anime YouTube. Uh, well, not completely stopped, but drastically cut back. It used to be like 80% of my YouTube diet, and now it's like 1%. uh, so I wanted to talk about that. Because it matters to me that the reasons why, because it's mostly about quality. um, Obviously, I'm the last one to talk about production quality, but that's not what I mean. Uh, what I mean is the subject matter, right? Like, I used to absolutely spend all of my time watching anime YouTube. Like, Giguk, Mother's Basement, Digibro, fucking anyone who did anything about anime, no matter how different they were from each other. you know? Like, I used to watch all kinds of channels like that just because they talked about a show I liked. I used to watch Quaman for hours. I can't even understand his fucking accent, man. Um, I mean, no offense, obviously, as people talk differently. I'm sure some people have trouble understanding me, especially when I ramble, but which is always. But that all kind of changed after a while. When I first started watching YouTube, the anime people were doing really good stuff. A lot of it was the typical YouTube video essay stuff, which you see all the time, but about anime. But another huge chunk of it was, talking about important shows and analyzing them and talking about, what kinds of things you should watch and why. But at a certain point, they all kind of stopped doing that. Digibro still does it to a certain extent. There are a couple of channels that are dedicated to one specific show that talk in depth about that show, but not much else. Totally Not Mark made the transition from being only about Dragon Ball to being only about One Piece. So there's some stuff out there, but yeah, mostly people just stopped talking about good stuff and started talking about new stuff. And new stuff is not necessarily good stuff. There's probably a good show in every season most of the time. But 99% of shows are not going to stand the test of time, and hyping them up right now is just a waste. You know what I mean? No one remembers what shit hit the fall season 20 years ago, right? No one remembers the other 12 shows that aired alongside Gurren Lagann because Gurren Lagann was the good show that year, right? You don't need to talk about all the new shit because the new shit is shit. That's just the nature of it. And the shit will fade into obscurity and die, and the good stuff needs to get praise and conversation going so that it can, continue to live. And this is doubly true of old franchises or whatever that didn't get a whole lot of recognition in their time. I wouldn't know about Legend of the Galactic Heroes if not for anime people on YouTube talking about it. And I'm very grateful for that. But, those same people value views and the new shit. And there was this crazy trend. I mean, it kind of started with SAO, but even even that didn't really get it going. Like the isekai trend, right? Like it kind of started with SAO, but realistically, it had always been a genre before that. Like the SAO light novels were by no means the first of their kind. Um, but also, it wasn't really that popular even after SAO did it. Like, it wasn't until a couple years later when a few other things in the genre got big that everyone really started dogpiling on it. You know, like I think Ray Zero is the one that most people talk about. Um, I refuse to watch because what a stupid fucking concept. You know, and then there was like Overlord and the slime one and the shield hero one and the one with the chibi girls and the one with the and it just goes on and on and on. And every fucking year, every fucking season, there'd be a new isekai. And every single fucking YouTube channel would suddenly be like, oh my god, you need to watch this isekai. It's better than all the others, I promise. And I'm like, why? Why can't you shut up about the garbage and focus on the good shit? Like, it's fine if you want to make one video where you break down, you know, why the genre is like it is. And I'm not saying there can't be good isekai. I really love shit like Ray Earth and Inuyasha, although Inuyasha went on way too fucking long. But also, those were back in a time when people gave a shit about storytelling, you know? And I mean, like, a power fantasy is fine too, right? Like, that's why people watch Dragon Ball, but but you gotta at least make it interesting, you know? Like, your battle shonen has to have some stakes. It has to have some character, some anything going on. I mean, not every show can be Yu Yu Hakusho, but like, put some fucking effort in at least. Ugh. You know, and that's why I don't give a shit about any of the isekai stories, any of them. I do remember watching SAO when it was new, and thinking, this is perfectly mediocre. Like, I've seen a dozen shows that are worse and a dozen shows that are better. A dozen is a vast understatement. I was in deep by that point. I'd already seen hundreds of shows, but I remember thinking, this is like the most middle of the road, plain generic power fantasy thing I've ever seen. I'm totally okay with that. You know, it's just a shitty little, you know, one season and you're done type thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's so many anime out there that got one season and then disappeared into the nothingness. And many of them were much worse than SAO. And a lot of them are better, you know. One of the weirdest ones that I always remember, just because it sticks in my mind for some reason, is pre-tier. Like, it's like Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, but the Seven Dwarves are a reverse harem of buff macho man magical girls, and they have to fight demons from Norse mythology, I think. It's been a while since I watched that, but I'm pretty sure someone summons the World Tree and something about a snake. But yeah, it was pretty good. and so, you know, there's a recommendation for a show you've probably never heard of. And that's the kind of shit I always came to anime YouTubing for, right? Like, I always wanted to hear about the shows I never knew about. And another big issue I had is every time one person wrote a topic, every other fucking channel would make the same goddamn video. Right? Like, they put their own spin on it, they do their own version, but they'd all talk about the same topic, one right after the other. You know, like 1 month, every single person I was subscribed to did a video about how power creep works in shonen anime. And like half of them mentioned Hajime no Ippo as the perfect example of a show that doesn't succumb to power creep, but one, it kind of does, and two, it's a sports anime. It's not a shonen battle series. It's a sports anime about boxing. And it's fucking amazing. And it's been running longer than One Piece. It has more chapters than One Piece, and I've read almost all of them, and it's totally fucking worth it. But also, not to spoil anything, but speaking as someone who's caught up, or mostly caught up, Morikawa, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I know you have a plan and everything, but like, why are you playing with my soul like this? Why are you building us up and tearing us down like this? You getting our hopes and our dreams, and you're shooting them in the dick, and you're just walking around and doing it again, and I need answers, man. Where is this headed? I mean, it's so deep. No, but seriously, at least watch the anime. It's done by Madhouse, and it looks fucking amazing. I mean, everything they do looks fucking amazing, but you know. And not to say that it's bad to talk about seasonal shows. Like, sometimes it's really good to talk about them. Hiroaka is like one of the best anime slash manga to come out in the last... Well, I don't actually know when the manga came out, but the anime started like 4 years ago, and it was definitely the best thing I had seen come out for several years prior to that. And it continued to be quite good. And I'm caught up with the manga. I don't know how well the anime fared, but I jumped ship and started reading the manga, and whoo, boy, man, like, oh, it just never stops coming, does it? You know? And I think it's really important to talk about shows and manga and stuff that kind of got a bad rap, or that kind of fell off in some way. Like, I really like Bleach, and you know, I mean, despite its problems, I even liked the anime. I mean, there's a limit to what you can accept in the anime, but you know. I mean, honestly, I'm amazed, absolutely amazed, that the anime for Bleach got canceled, but the one for Naruto didn't, because like they were being run by the same company, and they were doing the same horrible bullshit to both of them, and it was arguably much worse in Naruto because it had so many more flashbacks. Oh my god. I cannot tell you how many times I quit watching Naruto because of the flashbacks. And the only reason I ever finished it is because I decided I would just watch and skip all the flashbacks and all of the filler. And if you do that, it's literally half the runtime. Ugh. Just read the manga instead. It makes so much more sense when you do it that way. Although the war arc is still nonsense, no matter how you look at it. but at least they don't spend 10 years on filler shit in the middle of the war arc. So yeah. Although, come to think of it, Naruto doesn't have any filler arcs until after the time skip is supposed to start. Right? Like, they go to the final confrontation and then they get separated, and then Naruto has to decide to go on his solo quest, right? And right before he makes that decision, that's when they slam in all the filler so that the team can be, doing shit for like 5 seasons of filler. But honestly, how did they not get canceled during 5 seasons of filler? None of it was good. Anyway, my broader point was, I want discussions about that kind of shit. I want people to talk about their favorite currently running shows and shit that are good. And I want people to talk about the shit that died off years ago and is good. Because, you know what? The Legend of the Galactic Heroes is like, oh my god. It's so good. Like, I never knew I needed it until I saw it, and then oh god. Like, you know how Gundam has all these mecha battles, and then in the background there's all these dumbass, annoying, boring political conversations that try to be high-minded and strategic and make you think that they've got a serious message, but it's always the same, just like anti-capitalist bullshit from a company that exists to sell toys. Well, imagine if that was done intelligently and not stupid, and it was actually like really compelling and good, and you were hanging on every single word from every single character because your 2 leads on opposite sides of the war are equally worth rooting for and equally brilliant and equally right in their ideals and their goals, and oh man, it's so good. And it's so smart. Like I've read so many manga and anime that are just like afraid to be smart. Like, anytime someone uses a big word, they just stop and explain it. But not so. They don't hold back. They dive full force into politics and like what it means to be a democracy versus an empire, and like, oh man, it's so good. It's so good, man. And another big problem I had was that a lot of channels would recommend things that were complete dog shit. And as far as I could tell, they only ended up recommending them because other channels had recommended them. Right, like, I can wholeheartedly believe that Mother's Basement, starts doing a shilly video about Kakaguruki and needs to find a way to shove in another show, so he thinks of the only other gambling thing that comes up when he looks for it. And that's why he recommends Kaiji, right? But when another channel comes out with another video about Kaiji later that month, I think, oh, so that's what's trending now, is it? Cool. By the way, I watched Kaiji because of those recommendations from those many channels, and it's dog shit, okay? Like, this guy is the dumbest, stupidest, most shit-headed, no willpower, dumbass motherfucker in the history of the world. Every time he has the chance to walk away with the prize, he doubles down and fucks himself even harder. Like, good God, man. What a fucking moron. Like, the entire first arc, which is like 12 episodes, is literally just this slightly more complex version of rock, paper, scissors, where you play with cards, and once you use up the cards, they disappear, and you have to use them all. while earning a certain amount of points through betting on your matches and shit. And I just explained the whole goddamn concept in that sentence. And they took 2 episodes to explain it. And they spent another 4 episodes exploring the consequences of Kaiji being so unbelievably stupid that he loses at rock, paper, scissors. That he gets conned at rock, paper, scissors. And we're supposed to root for him because he gets back at the con man, I guess. Kind of. But I mean, he just barely walks away with, his life. Like, he just barely escapes. He doesn't win anything. Ugh. Such a dumb fucking loser. And I hate it. And I hate that show was recommended to me by people I thought I could trust. And I hate that I watched it because of their recommendations, because it wasn't worth it. You want a show that is worth it? Utena. The fucking, I think it's called Magical Girl Utena. That show is fucking worth it as shit. I initially found it because I saw a bunch of cover art. Well, I think I can't remember the exact timeline, but I'm pretty sure I saw DG Bro mention it briefly in a video, because he has some full-fledged discussions on it, which are very much worth watching. And he used some cover art that was peak Yuri, and I was intrigued because that kind of shit is never explored in manga at a serious level, at all. There's a couple of things that explore it, but it's always, sexualized. The only manga or anime that I've ever seen that takes a semi interesting approach to that is Citrus, and that's sexual as all hell. It's extremely sexual. But at least it does talk about the relationship dynamics and the complexities of navigating a non-standard relationship in a very rigid society and shit like that. But Utena was not about that. Utena was about fucking your mind. Just absolutely mind fucking you at every turn. Some of it is very standard for its era / genre. There's some default magical girl stuff. There's some high school battle anime stuff. And there's some, generic 80s / 90s anime stuff in there for sure. But there's also some weird shit, man. Some shit that makes you just think. Really, really think. And that is what I'm here for, honestly. I like anime. I like anything that can get me thinking and make me feel like the world is broader and more complex than I previously realized. And Utena was great at that. It was nowhere near the only anime that did that for me. Obviously, things like Gurren Lagann and the successor series, what is it called? Kill La Kill. That's it. Those, stories like that, or Bebop or Trigun, or stories that have a fairly standard structure, but also have an underlying message about the world, and then kind of fade off into symbolism towards the end. There's a lot of stories like that out there. And I think a lot of them are really interesting. Probably one of the best stories that ever made me just stop and think is Monster. Um, let me tell you, it's hard to stop and think when you're furiously binge watching because you have to see what happens next. Um, but that's what happens when you watch Monster, because every single episode just hits you in the skull and is like, hey, this is the world. Think about this shit. But also, it's a thriller mystery thing, and you have to see what happens next. You have to see the chase, and it's just, oh, it's so good. And that's the kind of shit I always wanted to see. I always wanted to see people spread the word about shit that was worthwhile. Shit that you may not know about because it's, it was popular in its time, but its time was 20 years ago. Actually, I don't think Monster was that long ago. I'm pretty sure the anime, at least, is from like 2010 or something like that. Maybe a little older than that. But it wasn't hand drawn. It wasn't cell animated, so it must have been after the 2000s. But anyway, shit like that is what I'm looking for when I watch anitubers, and video essays, of course, because those are always interesting. But most of the time, that's not what I get. Like Giguk is... No, sorry, that's the wrong name. Giguk is also worth watching, but that's not who I was going to talk about. Shit, I'm getting my people mixed up. Let me stop for a second. Like, Nuxtaku is the person who turned me on to Black Clover, which you should definitely watch. There was a lot of hype about it when it first came out, but the overall reviews were compared to the other things that were coming out at the time, so I figured I'd skip it. But then, like, a year later, he made a video talking about it, where he talked about how it's, like, peak shonen on purpose, and that it's really fucking good, And how, like, if you don't care for Asta's screaminess, then you can switch over to the dub instead, because it's less screamy, which it is, surprisingly. But, for the last, like, almost a year, I think, every video he's made has been some dumb meme bullshit about just random fucking meme nonsense that has nothing to do with anime. Like, he posts discussion threads about manga chapters like the day before they're really, like, days before they're officially translated and shit, and like, it's a nightmare, man. His channel is just everything I see on there makes me want to unsubscribe. I don't know why I haven't. Probably because I'm lazy. And there are some other, there are some channels that are really, really good and did really cool stuff. And then, as far as I can tell, they just stopped existing. Like, Unique Namosaurus was a really cool channel with a lot of good anime content, and he did some really important videos about the overall effect of piracy after Mother's Basement made his ridiculous elitist video about why you have to pay for your entertainment or, die, I guess. Like, seriously, I don't know what the fuck his argument was. Like, you have a moral obligation to pay for shit? Like, first of all, no, I don't. Second of all, if I'm poor and homeless and desperate, I don't need some rich asshole telling me that I'm a criminal because I can't afford something. Like, go fuck off. All right? Some of us need something to get us through our day while we drown in debt and despair, and you telling us we're not good enough is just a dick move. And so Unique Namesaurus made a really important comeback video about that. And then he made a really interesting and important follow-up video a few months later. And since then, nothing. 6 months ago, there was a video about how he's disappointed in Rise of Skywalker, which, yeah, that was a pretty terrible fucking movie. Big fucking shocker. I mean, there was no way that movie was going to be a success. Movie 7 was just A New Hope again. Movie 8 was actively trying to undermine everything set up by movie 7 for no apparent reason. And movie 9, they brought back the guy from number 7 who totally wouldn't have a grudge about that and totally wouldn't try to, undermine movie 8 and reset up his own canon. Like, Jesus Christ, you guys, what are you doing? That was bound to fail. Anyway. Yeah. So, anyway. But like, as far as I know, they just, I don't know, maybe the pandemic got to them, I don't know. But fucking nothing has happened in a long time. And before that, it was mostly just gameplay videos, which are fine, I guess, but that's not what I came to the channel for, Or like Explanation Point, right? Like, that's a channel that when it first started, I was really interested in. And he had a couple of really interesting videos dissecting some anime and some pop culture stuff, and then he just like went on hiatus for 6 months. And then every time he published a video, he'd just like disappear for a varied amount of time. And his videos just kept getting less analytical and more shilly and more infrequently uploaded. like I think he uploaded something like earlier this month, and the last video before that was like 8 months ago or something. Like, so long that I literally forgot about his channel. And so, like, I don't know, maybe it's not just me, maybe the anitubing scene has kind of died because of shit like that, but I don't know. I mean, Mother's Basement is still shilling along. Honestly, I stopped watching his videos a while ago. Like, when his channel first started, it had a really interesting gimmick. Like, I'd never seen anyone talk about anime openings as if they were like important. And so it was really, fascinating, and I wanted to see more of that, but he hasn't done that in like 3 years at least. Like that first year when he did the Cory in the House anime opening, like, oh my god, man, it was so good. So interesting and funny, but now he's just like, let me shill for this, and let me talk about this new thing that you can get a fucking copy of if you use my link to this manga subscription thingy, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, like, there's a limit to how much you can shill and be self-referential and get laughs out of it, and you passed that years ago, buddy. You're in too deep. You're in game theory territory on that shilling. You know what I mean? And well, except game theory doesn't have an ad in every episode. Only some of them. And there's some channels who have ads in every episode, and I don't mind that much. Like Linus Tech Tips, to shift gears completely, has an ad in every episode, but it's like 30 seconds at the very beginning, and that's it, right? Or he'll like weave in a mention to his store in every episode. But again, that takes like 1 second away from the video, and who gives a shit, Like, if I wasn't going to buy merch at his store, him mentioning it isn't going to change my mind. You know, uh, like whenever I see a new YouTuber, I assume they have merch because that's how the YouTube model works. I don't have merch yet, but I also don't even get paid for my videos yet, so whatever. You know, but it's sad to see that. You know, to see a channel that has like a really unique and interesting premise, and it just uses that as a jumping off point to be bland generic video essay shit that just says nothing. You know, like even his most recent video, which I actually watched because it was about One Piece and I'm a sucker for One Piece. Well, he was talking about the world building in One Piece, and like, I don't know, man. He could have said all the same shit in half as many words or less. You know? And like, this is a follow up to a video he made like almost a year ago that actually maybe more than that. And he's made like 7 other videos in between there. Like, I'm pretty sure he uploads monthly or whatever. And so it just feels so like, what is the point of this? You know? I mean, I'm glad whenever One Piece gets some recognition, and especially amongst Western audiences where, you know, people only remember the 4Kids dub and oh, the greatest butchering of history. Like, I'm not even joking when I say that 4Kids dub is more butchered than any other 4Kids dub. And that's saying a lot. Like, just for an example, one of the main characters, Sanji, smokes in every scene because he's a stereotype, right? Like, he's the suave French chef who wears a suit and smokes and everything, right? So he smokes in every single scene he's in 100% of the time. He has a cigarette. It's in his hand, it's in his mouth, he's putting it out, he's pulling up another one the second that one is out, right? He is always smoking. In the 4Kids dub, they made his cigarette a lollipop in every shot for its entire run on 4Kids. That's how dedicated they were. Right? Like, this is a show entirely about pirates fighting Marines, and there are guns everywhere. And they've made some truly insane things to replace the guns. Right? Like, there's this famous shot of one of the characters who has, like, what is essentially a hammer, a spring-loaded hammer, instead of a gun. It's so bad. Please just watch the actual anime, or better yet, read the manga. Because the actual anime is made by Toei, and Toei is a giant pile of dog shit who ruins everything they touch because they don't give their animators any time to work on the project, and they don't care about the project at all. This has long been an issue for every franchise, but it's most prevalent right now in One Piece. They have managed to stretch individual chapters across multiple episodes. For anyone who doesn't know, the standard rule when converting a manga to an anime is that you can get 2 to 3 chapters into one episode, right? And so, like, I shit you not, there were literally times when you had to skip 8 minutes in to get past the recap, right? It's insane how much they're butchering it in the anime. You know, it's no wonder that Toriko flopped. Oh my boy Toriko. Look how they massacred you. By the way, for anyone who doesn't know, Toriko is like the shit. Like the shit. Um, there's some problems with the anime, but if you want to see it in full color with sound and everything, then that is a perfectly valid way to experience it. Just know that the manga is not as cartoony and childish as the anime, but it is just as insane. Right? Like, one of the great things about Toriko is that the stupidest, most asinine, most off the wall shit happens at every turn. All of it is food themed, and all of it is played 100% straight. All right, the main character fights with attacks themed after forks, knives, and spoons, and just like beams of energy come out of his body to form the utensils as he fights. And that is played 100% straight, right? And in the anime, this comes off weird. Like there's this weird dissonance where like the visuals are very stupid and the actions are very, and the tone is very serious, but sometimes they shift the tone to be more stupid. So it's kind of hit and miss. But man, it is so fun and so worth it, and you have to eat while you enjoy Toriko, because otherwise you're gonna hate yourself. Because it is food. It is food themed. There's nothing but food in Toriko. So yeah, I rambled on for about 42 minutes. Hopefully there's some anime recommendations in there for you, and hopefully you will watch one of the other channels that I talked about and find something interesting. If you're really into intellectual discussions about anime, definitely go watch Digibro. He's super interesting, and he's kind of like made this his whole life for a long time. But he gets a lot more intense about it than most people do. If you want to watch some of the better, older videos from the channels I mentioned that are no longer are doing the thing that they normally do, I'll do my best to link them. There's only so many cards I can put in, and there's a limit to how many characters I can put in the description, and I've already got a bunch of links in the description anyway, but I'll do my best to link a bunch of things, and from there you can probably find more. But seriously, like, I want the anitubing scene to come back and be like how it was, 5 or 6 years ago when everyone was talking about their favorite shows all the time and like really exploring them. And there's, like I said, there's some of that still happens every once in a while. I think like 1 out of every 5 Giguk videos is actually a deep dive into a franchise he cares about. But that's not what I want. I want that to be the whole scene, because that's the good shit, I mean, it's fine to talk about new shit if you genuinely think it's going to be good, but I honestly don't believe that anyone actually thought that My Life as a Slime was a good show. I don't believe anyone thought that The Rising of Shield Hero would be the next big hit, because I only remember the name because I saw so many fucking thumbnails that mentioned it. And it's still bad. Sometimes they're interesting and kind of good shows that just get like a weird reputation. Right, like Goblin Slayer was a very interesting show right up until the second to last episode, or maybe it was episode 11, there was one episode that was all recap, and it's only a season long, and it's just like, what? Why? And then the last episode was just like this big battle where a bunch of people who had no reason to come fight came and fought, and it was just like, I guess. But up until then, it was pretty interesting. Uh, but like when it first debuted, there was this scene of a goblin committing rape, which is, awful. But it's an important part of the world building, right? Like that's an important part of what goblins are and why they're so terrible and why our protagonist hates them so much, and also why some other people hate them so much. Uh, and it's worth exploring that, and the whole show don't tell thing. But the problem is that, like, I guess it was accidentally marked as being like E for everyone when it's supposed to be TVMA or whatever. And so a bunch of people who weren't supposed to see that scene saw it and got outraged. But beyond that, because it was popular and outragey and whatever, every fucking YouTuber had to make a video about it. And I think Mother's Basement was the worst because he spent like 20 minutes analyzing each individual frame of the thing and making it sound like it lasted forever and was so awful. But like when I watched the episode, it was literally half a second long. Like the entire scene, start to finish, could not have been more than a second. And it's astonishing to me that people freaked the fuck out over that. And I mean, even with that, the first episode was pretty fucking good. Like, it established the characters, it established the world, it gave us some pretty badass action shots. We got to see a lot of the tactics and understanding of, this main character's mind and why, see what an experienced goblin fighter looks like and all this stuff. It was good setup for the rest of the series. It piqued the core interest. It gave us a look at everything. It's good. But that one scene pissed a lot of people off. And so the show basically died right there. And it really sucks. Because honestly, it looked like it could have been a very interesting show moving forward if they'd been able to move forward with it. Yeah, whatever, production mishaps. But, that kind of trend chasing is exactly the problem, right? Like, you didn't have to make a video talking about how awful that scene was and how it's wrong for anyone to ever show something bad happening in a story. Like, I just want to be 100% serious here. No one gave a shit when Yu Yu Hakusho showed us scenes from I forget what they called it, but there's this videotape of all the horrible things that humans have done to demons. And no one gave a shit when we saw scenes from that. And there were full-on rape torture dungeons set up with multiple people participating. All right? And no one gave a shit about that. No one cried outcry over that. No one would cry outcry over that if it came out today. Because, it's in the middle of a long-running established story and it's taking a serious look at the issue. And it's using this to establish context and talk about, how horrible these people are for doing these things. And like that's a valid thing for a show to do, Anyway, I'm rambling again, sorry. So go go get the anitubing scene started again somehow. I don't know. My legions of 4 subscribers, please do this for me. It's so stupid. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next life. Laters. Okay, end card time. I'm supposed to tell you to like, comment, subscribe, all that stupid YouTube shit. There's a bell thingy, whatever. I have all the social media stuff: Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. Mostly I use Facebook and Twitter to tell you about my Twitch and YouTube uploads. I've got a Patreon, but Patreon is one of those things where people who can afford to throw away money give money to people who can't. And so if you can't afford to throw away money, then you shouldn't be doing that. And if you can afford to throw away money, consider charities. There's a pandemic, there's global warming, there's millions of people in the world who don't have toilets, which is just awful. So I've linked a few charities in the description down below in case you're interested in that. And if you can't donate money to a charity, consider donating some of your time, because that's also very useful. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.